So he told his advisors to go back and I'll bring him more information.
That spring, while Kennedy's aides were gathering information, civil rights activity across the nation began to signal impatience with the slow pace of black economic advancement.
They're paying all those bricklayers and plumbers and plasters and structural workers and electrical workers $200 a week. But they're paying your daddy on construction $75 a week.
For nearly a decade, the civil rights movement had been waging a nonviolent struggle against discrimination. By 1963, the movement was attacking the economic barriers that helped to keep nearly half of all blacks in poverty.
We are striving for equal rights, for opportunity, for jobs, and more security for our young people, better schooling. I feel like we're entitled to it. We have one foot in the door now, and no time to stop.
In New York, Newark, and Chicago, blacks organized to protest school overcrowding and job discrimination. City officials feared a hot summer would bring violence.
The police was always there. They were around you, and it was always tense wherever you went.
In Washington, the president and his brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, were alarmed by the growing discontent.
When you have such high unemployment amongst Negroes, averaging in our major northern communities 2 to 3 times that of white people, so unless we can find employment for our people, then you're going to have many problems.
By summer's end, there had been more than 900 demonstrations in more than 100 cities, more than 20,000 arrests, and at least 10 related deaths.
We want employment, and with it, we want the pride and responsibility and self-respect that goes with equal access to jobs.
On August 28, 1963, 250,000 Americans marched on the nation's capital.
The March on Washington centered around jobs and freedom, social justice and economics, but the basis of social justice being economics.
The focus had changed to understanding that jobs were really, economics was at the root of everything that we were fighting for.
Although President Kennedy had feared in that angry summer that the demonstration would turn violent, the March on Washington was peaceful. But in the depressed coal towns of southern Appalachia, there was no peace.
The little working man has got no clothes, no shoes, no money, no nothing to send his little kids to school. That's exactly why the eastern part of Kentucky is in the shape he's in like today. The big man has knocked the little one down.
Unemployment in the region was now nearly twice the national average. Miners who could still find work were often not bringing home enough to support their families. In some Kentucky counties, 75% of residents survived on government food handouts.
If I didn't get this, I'd starve to death. Can't even buy shoes for them, nothing else. I got some barefoot and everything else. You work in these mines, make $4 a day, you can't live on that.
I made $16 one week, 6 shifts, working 12 hours a shift.
The miners' situation had grown more desperate when their union's health and welfare fund collapsed. Mine owners had stopped making their share of payments into the fund, and union officials had diverted millions of dollars from the fund into other enterprises. With fund accounts dwindling, union members lost their unemployment benefits and retirement pay. In late 1962, the union announced it would have to close 4 of its hospitals and cancel all health benefits.
The coal miners all got notice. A letter came from the fund to your house saying that as of June 23rd, your hospital card was to be canceled, and you would have no longer have any hospital benefits in in the hospital. And that's really what set people ablaze.
They canceled all of our hospital cards. We ain't got no hospitalization. In other words, we ain't got nothing.
We're keeping a peaceful picket line. That is until we're bothered or shot into. When this picket line's shot into, there's going to be more than little goes on.
Hundreds of unemployed miners in Hazard, Kentucky organized to fight back. They became known as the roving pickets.
The reason they called them roving, they would plan to go to the various mines each day and shut these operations down. It was just by the nature of the way they were doing it, you know, like caravans of cars and trucks, and 200 or 300 people showing up at a particular mines.
Now, their intent was to do as many of these lightning strikes as possible to basically tell the coal operators that they could not run these mines without problems if they were going to run them outside of the union contract and not pay the hospital benefits and not pay union scale in the mines. So this was very much like guerrilla warfare.
Coal operators imported guns and posted armed guards at every mine site.
Well, what about it? Do the men make enough money to get by on? A lot of them have been telling me that they don't down at Hazard.
The ones that'll work 5 days a week or 4 days a week and continue to work, why, they've got nice cars and nice homes, and the ones you see don't have anything is just slum rats, we call them, that don't want to work at anything, don't want to have anything. They're just out for their kicks in one of these picket lines.
By September 1963, violence had gripped the region for more than a year. The roving pickets bombed 2 railway bridges. Coal mines were attacked in the night. Coal operators retaliated by bombing miners' homes.
Well, I went down to Kentucky, to Hazard, Kentucky, on Labor Day, 1963. It was terrible. It was like a war zone. Basically, the coal operators in that very local region had occupied the place militarily. They all had hired company guns, of course, to attack the pickets and so on. So that was startling to me to see the backbone of American industry. These were coal miners. These are the people who create the energy for the entire industrial operation in the United States. You know, if you live in Chicago, they're the people who turn your lights on.
In October 1963, Kentucky's troubles made the front page of the New York Times. The reports raised the specter of death by starvation as another winter approached. In mid-November, President Kennedy told the governor of Kentucky that he would visit Appalachia as soon as he returned from a political appearance in Texas.
The day of his assassination was a very sad time for the coal miner. We thought we had an ally, you know, in the government, and we did, you know. We had a friend, you know, for labor. And when we lost him, it was devastating. And, you know, nobody had any confidence in Johnson.
No one knew what was going to happen next in terms of the various initiatives. And at that point, it was a wait and see because no one felt that he could move forward on anything at that point until there was a clarification on the part of the new president.
John F. Kennedy told his countrymen that our national work would not be finished in the first 1,000 days, nor in the life of this administration. But he said, let us begin. Today, in this moment of new resolve, I would say to all my fellow Americans, let us continue.
Those early months were an extraordinarily tense time for him, knowing how to walk between keeping some of the Kennedy programs alive and putting his own stamp on the ones that were really part of his own heart and soul.
President Johnson had a long agenda, and many things literally waiting on his desk, and his various departments were telling him what had to be done and what was pending and so on. And one of the things was this report from the Council of Economic Advisors about the nature of poverty. And the report is that when President Johnson saw the papers about the issue and the proposals that were beginning to be made, he said, "That's my kind of program. Let's go with it."
Somehow he knew this was his issue in a way that it wasn't John Kennedy's. How could that whippersnapper, he used to say, who went to all those private schools, know about poverty the way I know about poverty?
Lyndon Johnson had grown up in a poor part of Texas. He had lived through the Great Depression of the 1930s. He had come of age politically during President Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal.
He carried New Dealism with him in his bones. And part of the New Deal that he had in him was a willingness to experiment and a belief that it was okay to try a lot of things to improve conditions for people.
On January 8, 1964, Johnson called upon Congress to enact the first major anti-poverty legislation since the Great Depression.
Many Americans live on the outskirts of hope. Our task is to help replace their despair with opportunity. And this administration today, here and now, declares unconditional war on poverty in America.
The feeling among the people I worked with at the time